All right, I want to say ETM Hotep, welcome to our YouTube channel, the Sesh Medew Netcher YouTube channel. And today is Wednesday, and we're having our Divine Words Wednesday. And we're basically starting it back up. This is our first one. We went on a pretty long hiatus from Divine Words Wednesdays. We were going maybe a full year strong or year and a half strong with Divine Words Wednesdays as well as Freestyle Fridays, but we've taken a break from that, and now we're picking up on both of those. So we had our first Freestyle Friday session last Friday that just passed, and now we are at our Divine Words Wednesdays. So we're gonna start things back up, but we're gonna kind of take it slow and take it light tonight. And just to give a quick background of those two series of shows that we do, Freestyle Friday is when we choose a random picture, an inscription, an ancient Egyptian inscription, or have someone send it to us, or you know, point it out to us, or request that we actually speak on it, or do a freestyle. And so we call it a freestyle, you know, after pretty much rap freestyling and rapping. Except with us, what we do is we take the inscription and we go strictly from our memory and our knowledge, our own proficiency and knowledge of the glyphs, to identify the glyphs, and of the words. So we do it without using any of the books, whereas normally we would use sign list or glyph list and dictionaries. For Freestyle Friday, we omit those. We don't use those. And so it's become a fun exercise that we recommend everyone to do. Anyone who's studying Sesh Medew Netcher and Ronnie Kemet, it's a good exercise to do because you can evaluate your own competency and proficiency in the language. And it'll tell you what areas you need to work in, and you see how far you've come and how far you still have to go. All right. And we're all learning. Even in English, even in everyone's mother tongue, you're not going to memorize every single word in your language, even the language that you've been speaking all your life. And so that's why we use dictionaries, even in our mother tongues, because we're not going to know the meanings of all the words. So it's always a learning process for everyone. And so what Freestyle Friday does, it allows you to evaluate your proficiency, you know, so that you can memorize a lot of the common words, the things that you see all the time, and also the glyphs as well. We understand that Kemet, when it was all said and done, it had a repertoire of roughly 7,000 glyphs. But for the Old and Middle Kingdom, for both of those periods of time, there were only about 750 to 1,000 glyphs in use. And then that grew considerably during the Ptolemaic era, up to approximately 7,000. So we shouldn't expect ourselves to memorize all 7,000. It'd be great if you did, but it's pretty far-fetched, and it would be a tremendous task to try to memorize 7,000 glyphs. So therefore we use sign lists. All right, so the dictionaries and sign lists will be inevitable no matter how good or how competent or proficient you become. All right. So, but Freestyle Friday allows you to evaluate where you are, and we want to get as far as we can. All right, so that's Freestyle Friday. Divine Words Wednesday is when we kind of slow things down a little bit, and we're able to talk a little bit more detail about information, and we'll choose topics. So we're not really picking an inscription per se to just only translate like how we do on Freestyle Friday, although we will do that on Divine Words Wednesdays. But we slow things down to where we can kind of have a conversation about different topics. So Divine Words Wednesdays is topic driven, whereas Freestyle Friday is inscription driven, so to speak. All right, so that's the basically two differences between the two. And on both, we look forward to crowd participation, and we understand that on YouTube we have to make do with what we have. In terms of, we're looking at the chat, we monitor the chat, and every now and then we will open up our panel session so that we can have discussion, people can have their voice be heard. All right, so that's where we are, and so we're kicking it off. Today is our first day or first night, and we're gonna take it light. And by the way, I am your brother, Wujau Meneb Erimaat, and I do have others on the panel with me, and maybe you all can unmute yourselves and just introduce yourselves, and we can get things started.
All right. Dua Sabah Hujau, and my name is Imiket Aku Kinshai Akinyi, but you can just call me Imiket. And welcome to Divine Words Wednesdays. Hope you have fun, and if you have any questions, just feel free to ask.
ETM Hotel, welcome in peace, everybody. Rennie June, that's my name is June. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoy the show and leave with satisfaction. Hotel.
All right, Hotel. So others may be joining us. In the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So first thing though is I want to kind of, because it's our first Divine Words Wednesday in quite a while, and hopefully we'll have more people that will gradually start to watch and chime in and hang out with us, and be a part of the learning process. One of the things I want to kind of remind everyone is that a couple of things. You will hear us say the phrase Rodney Kemet, or the word Rodney Kemet. And Rodney Kemet is the indigenous name of the spoken language of ancient Egypt. All right. So instead of saying ancient Egyptian, you'll hear us say Rodney Kemet. All right. So that's one. As far as the writing system, most people will refer to as hieroglyphic or hieroglyphs. We refer to it as Sesh, Medew, Netcher. And that's the indigenous name of the writing system. And it was different styles of Sesh, Medew, Netcher, to where you have the formal detailed carvings that were etched in stone, and then you have the more simplified versions that were done with pen and papyri. All right, so we refer to all of that as Sesh, Medew, Netcher. We have the formal and we have the simplified. Egyptologists will divide it up into hieroglyph or hieroglyphic, and then they will call a different style cursive hieroglyphic, and even another style hieratic. All right, but if you can compare and you do the knowledge and you do the comparisons, you'll see that they are all Sesh, Medew, Netcher. It's just that they get a little bit more simplified depending on the medium in which it was recorded on. So when you get to pen and papyri, for obvious reasons, the scribes use different strokes to prevent themselves from lifting the pen off of the papyri as often as if you were to carve it. And so it became a much more efficient way to write and record details and administrative things. All right, so we had those two writing styles that were in use all throughout Kemet's history, and pretty much side by side with each other. Okay, so those are the terms that you will hear us mention. And also, what's very important is that Sesh, Medew, Netcher, or the hieroglyphic writing system, it is just that. It is a writing system. And we have to understand that a writing system, the purpose of having a writing system and using a writing system is so that we can visually represent speech or the spoken language. And that's very important. So in order for us to learn the language, we have to do so by way of its writing system. So we have to learn how the writing system works. And sometimes that can be very confusing to people who are new to this and may have not put in the time in studying, until they work up to that point where they can. It can be confusing. And so what we have been doing for the past year, 2 years, is hopefully to edify everyone and to let everyone know not to be intimidated by it, and that it's easy. but it takes dedication, and it takes some discipline and some focus. And most importantly, you can't microwave this process of learning. You can't cut corners and take shortcuts. Just like anything, if you take shortcuts, you're really shortening yourself. You're doing yourself a disservice. It's like trying to lose weight, or you know, you're trying to exercise, lose weight, or tone up, and you're just cutting corners. You'll never reach your goal if you're always shaving off of corners and cutting corners and things like that. All right. The same way with the learning process. Okay, so we have to understand that there is a correct methodology to all of this, and in fact, we can let's get right into our topic or presentation. All right, first I want to explain what everyone is seeing. Hopefully you all can see my screen, right?
Two.
Okay. On the screen we have the Scribal Institution, the home of the aspiring scribes of divine words, and that is our name, Seshu Ma'ani Medew Netcher, which is the loyal scribes of divine words who are aspiring to become true scribes of divine words. And so the word Ma'a carries the meaning of loyalty, loyal, as well as true. All right, so when something is true and straight, it's loyal. You can count on it and bank on it. All right, so that's the connotation of that word. So Seshu Ma'a are loyal scribes or true scribes, and the Ni Medew Netcher of divine words. And so we have a scribal institution that is in a very infant state, and it is an environment where we all can come together as aspiring scribes to learn. And so we have a curriculum, and we have what we call Tep Hesep, which is a correct methodology on this entire process. So we've done videos in the past about our pyramidal curriculum, and that's what you see on the screen now, our pyramidal curriculum. So seek those videos out. They're on our YouTube channel. We've done it before in the past. We've also done it on Facebook Live, so you can check that out in our Facebook group, Seshu Ma'ani Medew Netcher. And so we have 3 levels to our curriculum, and within each level we have 3 stages. So there's a total of 9 stages in all, and they're broken down into 3 levels that are symbolically correlated to the 3 seasons that were known to the ancient Egyptians. And that's another word that we prefer not to use. We prefer to call the Egyptians the Remich, or some people refer to them as the Medew. So either of those terms, Remich or Medew, is appropriate, or is more preferred, I should say, because those are indigenous terms for the people. So these 3 seasons were known to the ancient Remich, and so we correlate them symbolically to our 3 levels. They fit very well in a correlation because of what the seasons represent. So we have Akhet, which is when the Nile swells up and floods, and so it fertilizes the entire riverbed and banks of the Nile. All right, and so with that in mind, we understand that our first level of anything that we're learning, we have to have a fertile mind. Okay, we can't have a infertile mind with a bunch of weeds and things that are going to block the flow of information. So we have to fertilize our minds. And so this represents level 1, and it's broken down in 3 stages. You can read them or check out the other videos. Level 2 is correlates to Paret, which is a season of emergence. It's a season where things are planted, seeded, and grown. And so this represents for us our growth, is that this is when the information that we've are learning starts to sprout, and we start to see results of this information. Okay, and then that brings us to the 3rd level, which is correlates to the season of Shemu, which is where you reap what you've sown. And so it's the harvest season. So based on how well you've done for the previous levels, is how well or how well your crops will yield, which is metaphorically how well you'll be able to execute, utilize, and apply the information that you've learned. And there's a lot to utilize and apply. It's just that we have to actually go through a process of rediscovery, uncovery of it all. All right. So because, a lot of people will feel a disconnect between the Nile Valley. One, because a lot of Africans in the diaspora, African Americans, are here in North America via the transatlantic slave trade by way of West Africa. So a lot of people may feel a disconnect from the Nile Valley because of the idea that our immediate or recent ancestry came from West Africa. So there's a sense of, okay, well, ancient Kemet is too far back in the past, so why bother? And so what we've done over the past 2 years, and what we continue to do, is to uncover the valuable resources that the Nile Valley has to offer by way of the information that was left behind and documented. There's a plethora of information that the ancestors of the Nile Valley had left behind. And because Kemet is the model for African civilization, then we should use it as a resource, almost as a bank, like a bank account, where you go in, you go in, and if you need something, you go in and you check in, and you use it as a resource. It becomes a valuable resource. Not that we have to live in the past, and plus we don't live over in the Nile Valley, and we don't live in those times. But as a resource, a valuable resource, we can utilize it. And this is what everybody around the world does. With various different European nations, they have their classical civilization that they are anchored to and that they rely on as a resource. They don't go back in the past and try to live it, but they use it as a resource. So they have Rome, they have Greece, as European classical civilizations, with a primary focus on Greece. So much so that they proselytize it here in the West, where, we're taught that a lot of things started in Greece. But as we learn, we find out that that's not the case. So we should never shun our Nile Valley great civilization of Kemet. And so with that, you'll find that there's a lot of things that you'll learn and a lot of things that we can apply today that if we were done collectively or even individually, you'll find that we'll benefit from that. So anyway, I want to kind of quickly go through that to let people know that this is not a microwave situation when dealing with Kemet period in general, or specifically with the languages. None of it can be microwaved. We would actually be doing those ancestors of the Nile Valley a disservice and disrespect to microwave roughly 5,000 years of history. 5,000 years. I mean, we toss around these numbers as if they're nothing, but 5,000 years is a long stretch, in terms of years. So to microwave it and to just be very shallow with research and conversations about it, it really does a disservice to the greatness of Kemet. All right. And so we want to kind of change that. And that's what we've been doing for the past 2 years. And we will continue to do that. Okay, so I feel I've talked enough. And so we can get into our presentation for tonight. And then we'll look and monitor the chat and see if anybody has any comments or questions. And maybe possibly we can open up the panel if you all want to chime in and let your voice be heard. So hopefully that sounds all right, and we'll just jump into it. So, well, with that, since I've talked a lot, I will pass the microphone over to Sanet Imiket Aku Kinshai Akinyi, who will edify us on what we're looking at right here.
Okay,
I have a question. Sorry. sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right. Go ahead, Sesh.
What happened to our offering form?
I'm sorry. Yeah, speak up. Say it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me a little bit better?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. The offering form.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have it included here tonight, but we can start to include it. And I'm assuming that you know, on our previous shows when we were going consistent, we would actually start off our shows with the offering formula for every show. And so we can reincorporate that back. That would be a good idea. But we don't have it here.
Okay, but I can recite it if you need me to recite it right now. If you don't have it on the screen, I can still recite it.
Yeah, that would be good. So let me see if I could pull it up very quickly, because it would be very good for us to have it shown.
Okay. Yes, and it's also good. It's a good one to memorize, to kind of memorize as well. Yeah.
All right. Well, actually, since Sean suggested it, we should have Sean recite it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know. Okay, so let me see if I can pull it up real quick. We don't take too much time here. All right, give me 1 second here. I see that. Okay, so you want to let everyone know about the website. Let me give me a second to pull this up. Improv.
Okay, yeah, that will give Sunshine time to get ready. You ready, Sunshine?
Ready. Hotep's a tip.
Oh man, it's a trip.
Okay, so I'll let everyone know about the website. We have a while I pull this up, the website is seshmedunetcher.com, and that is a website where we try to make it a one-stop shop, you know, for all of your learning needs and resources on the website. And on the website, like I said, seshmedunetcher.com, it is the home of the Seshu Medew Netcher. So there we have a couple of we have articles, we have blogs, we have transliterations, translations, we have various different resources that you could download, and information about ancient Kemet. So definitely check out the website. And also we have Seba University, which is a learning environment. Seba, the word Seba itself, it means to instruct. It also deals with words dealing with student, teacher as well, everything dealing with discipline. And so we have the University of Instructions, or Seba University, and so that website will hold various different courses on different topics, not just ancient Kemet or the language, but various different topics that are of interest in our communities. But so far that's in the infant stage as well, and so right now we have our beginners course on there. So if you're interested in actually learning Sesh Medew Netcher and Rodney Kemet, that's the place to go. The courses are the beginner's course is only $100. It's for 12 weeks, and at the end of 12 weeks I guarantee you that you will be able to transliterate and translate basic inscriptions. All right, so, and I am talking up a storm to try to buy some time here.
Okay. While you do that, Sean, could you put the website on the chat? I think somebody was asking for that. The seshmedenetcher.com. Oh yes, and another thing, if you haven't joined the Facebook group page, I think you could do that. That would be a good idea because that's where most of the discussions actually take place. You can ask all different kind of questions. There are different people there who are competent in different areas of the language. So and the group page, it will be under the same name as you see on the YouTube page, which will be Seshu Maani Netcher. You can find us with that name on Facebook. And maybe Sean can put that also on the chat as well. But yeah, make sure that you join.
All right, Sean, there you are. You are up. You can see my screen. We have it on display.
All right. So we'll go ahead and go in. Now remember, the pronunciations are tentative. We'll delve into that if you're unfamiliar with the show. So at the top, you see the Sesh, what some people call the hieroglyphs, and then you see a transliteration in the middle and a translation at the end. And we'll be reading in the middle, and then we'll get to the bottom part. And it is Hotep Di Nasu, Usid Neb Jadu, Netcher Ad Neb Abju, DF Peret, Karu, Et Hinket, Ka Apet, Sesh Minket, Ket Nebet, Neferet, Wabet, Anket, Netcher, M, N Ka, N, Emaku, Aku, Ma'akaru. Basically, what I just said is an offering the king gives Osiris or Wasir, Lord of Jadu, great god, Lord of Abydos, so that he may give verbal offerings in beer, bread, ox, fowl, alabaster, linen, everything good and pure on which a god lives, for the god of the revered one, the ancestors justified.
All right, Iker, excellent. All right. So great. That was a great suggestion, and that's something that we always did on our previous Divine Words Wednesdays as well as Freestyle Fridays, because we wanted to kind of set the tone for our sessions, you know, our interactions and things. So we open up with an offering formula, and so we always advise people to try your best to memorize this, because this is a basic offering formula, and we call it an offering formula because there's some basic components that you'll see in all of the formulas, even though the details of them may change, because it'll depend on who the offering formula is made for, and as well as the different items that are included in the offering formula. So you'll see some slight differences and some longer ones and some shorter ones, but the basic components or elements are in all of them. And so that's why we refer to it as an offering formula. And it starts off with the introductory phrase of Hotep Di Nasu. And if you see this one, this is a good one to memorize because it has a certain cadence to it, almost like a rhyming poetic or cadence to it. Like, for example, if we say the first line, Hotep Di Nasu, Wasir Neb Jedu, Netcher A Neb Abju. So if you notice that U sound, Hotep Di Nasu, Wasir Neb Jedu, Netcher A Neb Abju. And then when you even get down to the third line, we have Ket Nebet Neferet Wabet Anket Netcher Im. So it sounds like, you know, almost sounds like someone's, you know, better put a beat behind it and go ahead and kick some bars. But we have and then Inkani Imaku Aku Makeru. So that kind of has a cadence or a rhyme to it. Inkani Imaku Aku Makeru for the last line. So it's always we recommend that you memorize this one. This is a very good one to memorize, and it'll be a lot easier. Someone else was about to say something. Okay, I thought someone else was about to speak. So, okay, so that will be the offering formula. All right. And actually, you know, what I was saying earlier about the method, you know, there are different things that we always talk about on our shows, and we like to point them out just as reminders, so that people can understand that there is a rhyme and reason and a method, a proper method we refer to as tep hesed, which is the correct method on how to transliterate and translate inscriptions. This is not some hayward or miscellaneous or I'm going to do it any way I feel, any way the wind moves me to do it type of thing. This is not that type of thing. All right. And so we have to really guard ourselves and try our best to stay away from falling into that trap of winging it, because there's a proper methods on how to do this. Like, for example, if you want to bake a cake, there's a certain steps and methods you have to do for your cake to come out the way it should. Otherwise, if you skip something or you take out some ingredients that's supposed to be there, whatever, you're not going to get the end result that you're looking for. And that goes for everything. And this is no different. Okay, so just wanted to remind folks of that. And dua for that, Sunshine, and as well as the recitation. So now we're going to go back to our artifact here, and I will pass the mic over to Sonnet Imiket.
All right. Yeah, dua. So what you're seeing on your screen is it's a Shabti box of Yuya, or some people say Yuya. And it has a pretty short inscription that we are going to be going through. And Yuya actually was existed during the 18th dynasty, I believe. And it's a simple inscription, and that's what we are going to be going over today, just to kind of demonstrate the proper method of translating and transliterating. So we have gone ahead and if you cannot see the glyphs properly on the box, then we have those. We have transcribed those on the right side of the screen.
All right. And so, what would you say about these glyphs in terms of the process on how we always say there's a tep hesed, correct method on how to transliterate and translate? What could you ascertain from just looking at this right here?
Again, I didn't get the question.
By looking at the glyphs or the object, what can and relate that to the correct method in transliterating and translating? What could you say about these glyphs?
Okay, with the correct method, we would go through the 4 steps. We have 4 steps, and the first will be to identify the direction in which the glyphs are to be read in. And on this one, we can see that it is they are written in columns, in columns, and then we would look at the direction. To determine the direction, we will look at the glyphs that would help us do that. Will be the animate glyphs, which would be glyphs of people, animals, birds. And in this case, we can see from the top we have the seated man. We also have the reed leaf, and then at the bottom we have the seated deity, and then we have the quail chick and a vulture. Yes, and they are all facing right. So this inscription will be read from right to left, and since they are in columns, they will be vertical, right to left, and that will be the first step. And I don't know if you want me to go over all the other steps as well.
To you, yes, because yes. To you.
Okay, and then the second step would be to identify the different glyphs, and how they function. And in this case, usually the monoliterals will be easy, but we don't, at this stage we don't, we're gonna skip that, and I'll probably just identify some other glyphs that are not monoliterals, like on the top one we have the rib, and then we have the eye, and then we have and then we have the seat. Yes, and then we also have and the Netcher, the flag post. So those are when, depending on what stage you are, or what level or what stage you are in reading or translating. Most of the time, and at this stage, most of us will probably just try to look at the glyphs that we cannot recognize, but we should be familiar with most of the glyphs. And then the next step, which will be the step number 3, will be to put the glyphs into words, or identify. At this stage, you'd identify what words we can recognize on the inscription. And if you remember the offering formula, I think you should know the top part, which will be imaki. And those will be those 4 glyphs. That's one, that will be a word. And another word that will be easy to identify at this stage will be Weser, which will be the I, the seat, and the deity. And usually it's easier if you see determinatives, like that one has a determinative at the end. So that will tell us, that we can be able to identify that as a word as well. And then we have some other, the other word that I see is the one with the jug and the 2 reed leaves, which would be hesi. And at this stage, we'll be looking at words in the dictionary as well. And we go through, what we use a lot is the online dictionary we use a lot is the Vickers dictionary. And once you identify all the words and you've looked them up in the dictionary, then the 4th and the last step would be to come up with a translation. And the translation can be, tentative. It doesn't have to be an exact sense from one person to the other, but as long as the meaning is the same. But the transliteration, we always say that is an exact sense. And yeah, we don't have the transliteration on this slide, so we'll get to that next, I think.
All right. Okay. Excellent. All right. That's good. So I would just add that for step 2, when you're identifying glyphs, what you would have to know when we say identify, what you should know about the glyph is, first you should be able to recognize what it is. And so that's what we have, the rib and we had the eye. But you also should know how it is transliterated, or what does it represent and what is the possible function. So we know that glyphs that can represent consonants, and we have to understand that in the writing system there are no depictions of vowels. There's no documentation of vowels. So all of the glyphs that you see in the writing system are representations of consonants in the language. And so there are glyphs that represent one consonant, as Sonnet Imicat mentioned, monoliterals. Those are glyphs that represent one consonant, mono meaning one, and some people refer to it as uniliterals. The word uni and mono mean one. And so they represent single consonants. Then you have some glyphs that represent 2 consonants that we refer to as biliteral, bi meaning 2. Then we have some glyphs that represent 3 consonants, and they're referred to as triliterals, tri meaning 3. And you also have very few, but some that may represent 4, call them quadriliterals, or we simply say multiliterals for any of those that are above 3. Okay, so you have to know these things about the glyph. So it's not enough just to be able to identify, okay, let's say this is an eye, and stop there. You have to be able to know what are the possible ways that this particular glyph can function. And we learn all of that from a sign list. And like I said about our Freestyle Fridays, we don't use the sign list. We try to go from memory. And so the more that you memorize, obviously the better and more faster or efficient you'll become at reading, but that comes with time. And so those are the things that you're going to need to know for that second step. And the only thing I would like to add for the third step is that the third step is a pattern recognition step. And it may be intimidating at first, but it's not. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be scary or intimidating. It's easy, but it takes some time. It takes putting in man hours to get used to actually seeing words more and more often. So, for example, once you get used to doing this and you practice, you'll start to recognize words for what they are. So we refer to this as a parsing step, where you're looking at individual glyphs, but you're parsing them into the words and grouping them into the words that they represent. And the more, obviously, as I said, the more that you do this, the more you'll be able to see words. Okay, and that's it.
Yeah, and quickly to quickly answer this, I think it was Jehudi or Sarah was asking, how do you know if you read top down or down to top again? But just wanted to quickly say, we don't actually read down to top, but we can read top down, and the direction, I think, like Senshan said, you would look at the animate glyphs of animals, people, birds, and the direction they're facing. That's so we read into the we're reading into the signs. So if they're facing right, like they're doing here, then we read from right to left, and then we have you can read either right to left, top down, or across. But this is in columns, so we're reading from top to bottom.
Okay, yeah, and to really make it crystal clear, because I've seen people ask this every now and then, and so there are 4 possible directions to read the glyphs. But when people say that 4 possible directions, it doesn't mean that you can take a single inscription such as the one we're looking at and then choose any of those 4 directions. So just remember a basic rule: you always read into the glyphs. That's very simple to remember, and it's like you're having a conversation with the glyphs. So you're going to always read into the glyphs. And so if you can remember that, then you can remember the direction that you're going to read them. And so if it's in rows and you have columns, and as Emiket already said, you're not going to read from the bottom up. You're always going to read from the top down. Even in rows, you're actually reading from the top down, but you're going sideways. And so any glyphs that are stacked, you're going to read the top one first. And if it's in columns, you're traveling downward, but you're reading from right to left in the case of the ones that we're looking at here on the screen. But the general rule to remember, the easiest rule to remember, is that you read into the glyphs. It really doesn't get any more simple than that. All right. Now you can't read a one inscription. For instance, this inscription, you can't read it from right to left and then say, hey, well, let me read it from left to right also. It doesn't work that way. That would be the equivalent of taking a paragraph in English and reading it from left to right, how English is written, and then just saying, okay, well, let me read it from right to left, just for the sake of, and it will become unintelligible. You wouldn't be able to know what is being said. And so this is the same. All right, so we have to make that very clear. All right, so like I said, this is a very there's a rhyme or reason for everything here. You know, it's not something that you can go off of you know, whatever it is that you want to do. It doesn't quite work that way. Okay, so we can go on, and we will switch up to the next. And see, so this is why I wanted this is why I wanted you to go over that first before I switch to this slide, because this slide reveals everything. So I'd rather explain it, and then now you can kind of walk us through what we have here.
All right. So I can quickly read the transliteration, which will be Imaki, and that will be the first 4 glyphs. And then we have Her, which will be the next 2 glyphs. Then we have Weser or Osiris, which will be then the 3 glyphs right there. And then we have Hesi, which will be the next 3 glyphs. And then the N, which will be the water ripple. And then Nefer, Netcher, or Nefer, Netcher, yeah, will be those 2 glyphs right there. And then you have Uia, which will be from the first.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Okay, you have to, or can you explain, because we just told people that you read from right to left, but you just read this one from what would appear to be left to right. So that could be very confusing. So I think you should explain that.
Yeah, good catch. Yeah, so on this side it's written, I read it Nefer Netcher, but it's written Netcher Nefer. And in this case, this is what is known as graphic transposition. And you will see this with titles of deities or kings, and it's just to give respect or honor to such figures. And so you'd have the name of the Netcher or the deity, or it will it will be written first, but it's not when it's read after. But and that is what is known as graphic transposition. So in this case, it is written Netcher Nefer, but we will read it as Nefer Netcher.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Okay, yeah.
All right, yeah, good. Dua. And then we have the next 6 glyphs actually will be Uia. We'll start from the first reed leaf and all the way to the seated man. And then we have Ma'a, which will be the column, but the whole phrase Ma'a Heru will be those two, which will be the column for Ma'a and Heru for the O. And then we have again Her, which will be the next 2 glyphs. And then we have Netcher A, which will be the Netcher, the flag post, and then the wooden call. And so just to read the whole thing will be Imaki, Her, Basir, Hesi, and Nefer Netcher, Uia, Ma Heru, Her, Netcher A. And you have that, that is the pronunciation you see in the middle there, which will be Egyptological spelling or pronunciation. That's just tentative. And then what we have been reading, the translation will be the revered one before Wesir or Osiris, favored by the good God, or some people will say Netcher, Uia or Uya, true of voice or justified before the great God or Netcher.
All right. Okay, excellent. Okay. So I just want to make a comment about this second section, the Egyptological spelling and pronunciation. When we're learning a language today, when we go to school and we learn a second language, our second language acquisition, the way that we learn living languages today is done with an emphasis on pronunciation. So a lot of people that I've come across that want to learn Rodney Kemet and Sesh Medew Netcher, they have the assumption that we learn it the same way, and that's a normal assumption, you know, and we understand why that assumption is made. But I find myself, we have to explain to everyone that that is not the case when we're dealing with a language that is dead, a dead language. And there's a difference between a language being dead and a language being extinct. And so dead languages, meaning that there aren't any speech communities that are speaking it as a national or official language, and even in a first language capacity. Okay, so you're not going to be able to go into a speech community and converse with people that are speaking Rodney Kemet as you would a speech community speaking Spanish or French or Italian or German or any of the living African language such as Kiswahili, Luo, Chiluba, Kalenjin, Yoruba, etc., etc. You can find large communities of people that are still speaking those languages to this very day. So the approach to learn can have an emphasis on pronunciation, because you can actually be a part of the experience, the speaking experience. But when it comes to Rodney Kemet, the writing system of Sesh Medew Netcher, it doesn't have the vowels recorded. So when we say Egyptological spelling and pronunciation, what early Egyptologists did in order to be able to have a conversation about the language beyond just knowing what the words mean, they had to be able to pronounce them. So when Sanet Imiket said tentative, the early Egyptologists simply put they consented among each other in Egyptology. This is what they refer to it as a consensus. And they just simply agreed to put a short E in between all of the consonants. So this is why we say words like Nefer, Netcher, Seneb, and all the other different words that we pronounce today. Those are all simply Egyptological conventions. And they're never meant and they're never claimed to be the historical pronunciations. In fact, some scholars will even tell you that if the ancient Egyptians were to travel forward in time to here and now in 2018 and hear the way that we pronounce the language, they wouldn't recognize it. They most likely would not recognize it. So the big question that I'm always asked is, well, if that's the case, then how do you know what everything means? And so this is where we have to understand that pronunciation and meaning are not necessarily mutual with each other. In other words, I can know the meaning of a word without ever knowing how it's pronounced and without ever pronouncing it. And we do it all the time. Because if I were to tell you to take any English paragraph of any book, just open any book you have around you, near you, a newspaper or whatever, and just look at any paragraph and just read it to yourself. Don't read it out loud. Don't pronounce anything. And guess what you would have just done? You would have just read it and you understood it without pronouncing anything. So pronunciation is not a requirement for knowing what something means. And so that's the difference. So our pronunciations today, they're tentative and they're based on convention. There is a project underway that is in whose goal is to recover the historical pronunciations as best as possible. But that's a very meticulous and very scientific endeavor, and it's going to take some time to accomplish. But it is a project that's underway by African scholars and those of us in the diaspora who are also on board with that project. All right, so it's going to take some time, and you know, as progress is made, then I'm sure there's going to be publications made about it. So just know that. I just want to make sure everyone is familiar with that process. But that's what we refer to as Egyptological pronunciations and spelling. All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that I think, I don't know if I said graphic transposition, but Dua to Senate Lisa who corrected me, that's honorific transposition. So yeah, where we had the Netcher, the standard pole, and then the heart and windpipe, which was written as Netcher Nefer, but is written as Nefer, but is pronounced read as Nefer Netcher. That would be honorific transposition. Graphic transposition is when we have misspelling of the glyphs. So yeah, Dua Senate Lisa.
Okay, excellent. Okay. All right. And just by the way, just a few words that you may hear us say, and even other people will say, and I'm hearing more people use these words, which is really good, because even though, as I just now explained, all of our pronunciation today are tentative. You know, they all are based on Egyptological convention. And so until the project is completed, we will continue to use the consensus or the convention because we know what the words mean. And so so in the meantime, we can memorize a couple of these words, even though our pronunciations are tentative. So you'll hear us say words like Iker, which means excellent, Tiyu, which means yes, Dua, which means to give thanks or praise, to show appreciation, those kinds of words. So every now and then when you hear us say these words, we'll try to kind of give a little vocabulary list of some very common words that we use. Usually when we open up the show, we say ETM Hotep, which is welcome and peace. And there's a whole backstory for why why that's used. When we depart, we say Shemem Hotep. You may hear people say Ankh Uja Seneb, which is to say life, prosperity, and health. the fuller phrase, that's like an abbreviated way of saying it, but the fuller phrase is DE or DNE I gave, or DE inek if you're talking to a man or a male, DNE in etch if you're talking to a female, and you would say DNE in etch Unc Ujasanet, which is I give you life, prosperity, and health. Or, you know, you can say it in a form of a wish. You know, may you have life, or may you live, prosper, and be healthy. Those, but people will shorten it to just Uncle Jasanet. So those are some of the things that you may hear us say. So a lot of the words, if I think of it, I will make sure that we kind of point out those words, and we'll make a habit of doing that as we did on our previous shows. So when we come across it, we'll make sure we point those things out. All right. Just a couple of more. I said TU will be yes. Nin is no. Another one, when we say good night, we say Gare Nefer. Good morning, Becca Nefer. Good afternoon, Mishiru Nefer. Yeah, so those are ones I could think of right here off the top of my head that we use, and we'll be using pretty much on all of our shows. Those words right there. All right. So so now let us go to the chat and see if there are any questions or comments in the chat that we need to address. So if anyone on the panel sees any questions, feel free to read it out loud, and then we can address them. So I'm scrolling back, and I'm just going to try to check out, see if I see anything. Okay, I see Jehuti Asar Ra says, okay, I'm sorry, let me scroll back some more. I don't want to make sure I don't miss any, because some of these are continuations. Okay, Farouk says you read in the direction of the glyphs, facing the glyphs, question. And so yes, hopefully he's clear on that. You face the glyphs. Okay, so just imagine yourself having a conversation with the glyph. So like, for example, what I have on the screen, this vulture here, this vulture is facing to the right. So if you were to talk to this vulture, you would be standing in front of it, facing it. So you would be facing to the left. So you would read from where you are to the left. So you would read from right to left. Okay, so you read into. You read into the glyphs. Okay. Now, hopefully this doesn't confuse anyone, but there is, actually it's not an exception, but there is what potentially could be a confusing phenomenon that takes place in some inscriptions, and it's called retrograde inscriptions. And so maybe I can pull up an example to show. Let me see if I can get one pulled up quickly. But until I pull this up, if there's any other questions that any of you all see, you can read it, or comments.
Yeah, there was one question, but I think it got answered. Was so can you go over the determinative identification process? I understand it determines the end of the word, but how do you know? So I guess we wanted to know how you know what the determinatives are. But the determinatives, you have to get familiar with some of the common determinatives that we have, and usually like the seated man or the seated deity. Those are some of the common determinatives you're going to be familiar with. But as it's been stated, if you have the book, we have a list of some of the common determinatives that you kind of creep up on a lot, and those ones will help you identify when you get into the end of the word. But usually you have like people, the human figures. A lot of those will be determinatives. I don't know if anybody else on the panel has any other tip on how to determine how to know the determinatives.
Yeah, we got another question. Jeanette Yolanda asked, does upper or lower casing of letters change the transliteration of words in any way?
Yes. And I'm pulling up this example here, but I want to go back to that determinative question. For the determinatives, the question is, how do you know? Some words do not have any determinatives. So the answer to how do you know, it will come when we actually put in the time and familiarity. So it comes with time and becoming familiar with the words. Now that sounds kind of rough, but that is the way that some of these words will be learned. And it's the same way that now for example, in English, we're fortunate because our words are separated by spaces. So we have a natural parser called a space. And so we know where one word ends and another one begins because there are spaces. But if those spaces weren't already done for you, then you would have to do the same thing that we do with Sesh, Medew, Netcher. You would have to make a determination for when the word ends and another one begins. So what you should do is write down an English sentence, but write it down with no spaces. Okay, just a short sentence. Write it down for yourself. Pick anything, just copy it, but copy it with no spaces. Then just imagine if you didn't already know where the spaces are. How are you able, ask yourself, how are you able to read it? And the answer that you're going to come away with is because you have learned the language and you recognize words for what they are, regardless of the spaces that are there. And this is a natural phenomenon that our minds do. We tend to look for patterns and not individual characters. Our mind is kind of thirsty and is reaching out for patterns. And so once we find a pattern, our minds tend to stick to that versus going backwards and looking at individual characters. It's only when it's fresh and new that you're going to look at an individual character. So like for the glyphs that you see on the screen, when you're new to this and you're seeing this for the first time or, you know, fresh, then you're just going to look at every single glyph as a solo independent glyph because your mind is not used to anything. It doesn't recognize any patterns yet at all. So you're just going to look at the beauty of the glyphs. You're going to say, wow, that's an eye. That's a jar. That's a quail chick or a bird of some sort. That's a vulture. Wow. You know, it's an open mouth. You know, your mind is just going to focus on what the glyphs are and then that's it. But when you become more and more familiar with the language and you start to see the patterns that the words form, then that's something that is learned and it takes time. So that's what's going to happen naturally. You don't even have to worry about that. That's going to automatically happen naturally. And then the other way of how we know is that you have to take time to memorize the general determinatives. As Sonnet Imiket said, we have a list of them in our books, the beginner's textbook, as well as the rebuttal to has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered. So we have the determinatives, the general determinatives, about 120 of them, I believe, that you could just start to become more and more familiar with them. Okay, so those will help. But again, not every word has them. Okay, like for example, the prepositions, they don't have it. And then some of the verbs and things may not have determinatives. But you will likely find them on the nouns within the language. Okay, so between those different combinations is how you would know. It's not a one thing that will put you there in the game. All right, so I just wanted to kind of make sure that was clear. And so since Sean, you said someone else had a question about something else.
T, Sonnet me go back to it. Senator Yolanda, she asked, does upper or lower casing of letters change the transliteration of words in any way?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. The answer is yes. It does. When you use the transliteration system that is called manual decodage. And let me just get back to my cursor here. So what you're seeing on the screen is a transliteration system referred to as diacritic. This is a diacritic transliteration system, and this is not case sensitive. Okay, so your question as far as upper and lower case, it does not apply to the transliteration system that you see on the screen, which is the diacritic transliteration system. But when we use the other transliteration system, which is called manual decodage, then the answer is yes. It is case sensitive, upper and lower case. So for example, if I were to, let's just do this. I'll do this here. So you can see, and we will show both.
Going to the RAM when you're talking about source and target.
So just bear with me 1 second. I am going to shift this back out so that, okay. So here we have two transliteration systems at work. The top one is diacritic, and the bottom one is, let me spell that for you. And let's get it correct here. So we have diacritic, and then we have what's called manual decodage. So this top one here, I'll just put it here, and this is on the bottom. All right, so that we're clear on it. Don't want to confuse it. Okay, so now, just to make this clear, the top one is diacritic, and so the case sensitivity does not apply. All right, this next one is manual decodage system, and it is case sensitive. So the reason for manual decodage is to eliminate the need for people to have keyboards or special software to put these different diacritic marks, like this dot under the H, the curve that you see under the H for this particular word and this word, this line under the T, etc. So if you notice, if you look at all the characters that have a diacritic mark, they are represented a little differently in the manual decodage. So for example, the T with the underline under it for the word Netcher, the T is capitalized. So a capital T in manual decodage system represents the tethered rope glyph, which would be the ch sound, as in church. So this is what we say, Netcher. If it was a lowercase t, then it would be a regular T, like in the word Tom, Timmy, you know, Teddy. Okay, so so again, like this H with a dot under it, it's a capital H in manual decodage. So this is an aspirated H, the one with a lot of air coming out your mouth as you enunciate this particular letter. So you say Hesse, as opposed to the lowercase h here will be a regular H that we would normally pronounce. All right, the H with the curve under it is transliterated in manual decodage as an X. So even when we say the word unk is transliterated in manual decodage as ANX. But in diacritic, it would be transliterated as AN and then with this H with the curve under it. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. So the answer is yes, only when we're dealing with manual decodage. But it's non-applicable to this transliteration system, diacritic. So what we have on our screen is we're using diacritic transliterations. Now, the reason that a person will use one or the other, it just depends on your personal preference, number one. Two, it depends on what kind of work you're doing. Because when you're on social media, then the manual decodage way is appropriate. This way right here at the bottom. And the reason why is it should be obvious, because when you're on social media, you're just typing on a regular keyboard, no special application or software, anything is needed. You're typing, and you can do the case sensitive aspect. But when you're writing books, or you're doing some things for print material, where you have layouts and things like that, then most scholars will use diacritic. Okay, so that's the major difference of why we prefer one over the other depending on the situation. All right, so hopefully that is understood. And then you have to understand what transliteration is in general. And we explain all of these things in our rebuttal book, and it's also in the beginner's textbook. But in the rebuttal book, it goes into a little bit more detail, because it's explaining how the writing system works, which is prerequisite knowledge you need to know in order to know how and why the writing system has been deciphered. All right, so hopefully that was clear. And so let me quickly go over to what I wanted to show before. Can you all see this papyrus on the screen?
2.
Okay, so what I have here is the papyrus. This is a papyrus, one of the sheets from the papyrus of Hu-Nefer. Okay, this is the Rauniyu Peret Imheru, better known as the Book of the Dead of Hu-Nefer. All right, there's the more popular one is the Book of the Dead of Ani, and then probably in second place is Hu-Nefer. Most people know between those two, Ani and Hu-Nefer. Someone had a comment. Okay, I don't know if I heard an echo. Okay, so now earlier I had mentioned the direction, and I had mentioned something called retrograde inscription. And so not to be confusing at all, because this is not confusing. The rule applies that we said earlier. You're going to read into the glyphs. That's the basic rule that you can remember. You're not going to read into the back of the glyphs. You're not going to. We don't talk to each other in the back of our heads either. So that's a very simple rule to remember. But let me get my cursor on it. There are inscriptions called retrograde inscriptions, and these inscriptions are usually those when it occurs, I should say, and it doesn't occur much, but when it occurs, it's done when inscriptions are in columns. And so, for example, this whole sheet here, all of the glyphs in this picture are facing to the right. And earlier we said that you're going to read into the glyphs, which means you're going to read from the right to the left. But that is to read the glyphs themselves. So if I were to go in this column here, the assumption that people will make is that because they're all facing to the right, then I start from the right and read to the left, go from right to left, which will make this column here column number 1. But that is an assumption that is not very good to do. And so this is why we are very specific and detailed when we educate and teach this information. So if you remember the rule, you always read into the glyphs. You're going to read into the glyphs. But when it's in columns, it doesn't mean that this is column number 1. This column over here happens to be column number 1. So you're going to read into the glyphs within the column. So the glyphs within this column is facing to the right. So you're going to read from right to left, but you're going to read into the glyphs within the column. And so the technical term for this will be columnar retrograde, which means the columns are in reverse order, but not the glyphs themselves. So this will be column number 1, column number 2, 3, 4, and so on. But within the column, you're still going to read from right to left. So if you're coming down, you're going to read from right to left, right to left, right to left, right to left. And you go to column number 2, you read from right to left, right to left, right to left, right to left. Column number 3, right to left, and so on. So the column numbers would be in reverse. Okay, so hopefully that's not confusing, because like I said, the rule is the same. You're going to read into the glyphs. It's just that the columns now, you're going to read, the columns themselves are numbered from left to right in this case. And like I said, it doesn't happen very often. And when it does, most of the times when the scribes did this, the reason why they did this was so that the reader can follow the action as it happens. So if they're writing about someone taking a journey, for example, this is Hu Nefer. You can see his name right here, Hu, and then Nefer, and he is a Sesh, or a royal scribe. Sesh Nesu, Hu Nefer, Ma Cheru. His journey through this papyrus, you know, when a person dies, they are given a funerary procession, and they're marched from their home and they go to their grave. And so there's a parade or a procession that takes place. And so as the company of people, or as the parade marches from the home down to the gravesite, the reader is gonna walk with them. So you're gonna read from left to right in the columns, but within the columns you're gonna read the glyphs from right to left. So if this showed the picture of the procession, you would see them all traveling to the right. So you're gonna follow them. Your eyes and you're reading the story, you're gonna follow them, but the individual columns you're gonna read from right to left. That's how you have to read them. So hopefully that made sense. Okay. And another place that you'll find it in the underworld text, especially because the underworld texts are the texts that deal with the duat in the tombs. Because when you're in the tomb was designed to be a roadmap to travel. You're traveling from the northeast, north, south, east, and west. The different walls. The inscriptions are on particular walls for a particular reason, and you're traveling. So you're traveling through the 12 gates of the Duat. And so obviously you're going to start with gate 1 and end up at gate 12 or cavern 1. Or, you have the book of gates, you have the book of caverns, and so on. And so you have to travel through these regions in their proper order. So they would have the reader would read and follow the action, but the glyphs may be facing that way because all of the glyphs are traveling with you as well. But in order to read them, you have to read from, in this case, right to left. Okay, so hopefully that is not confusing. That'd be counterproductive on my part to make something so simple and and then make it confusing. Yeah.
Now that was very clear because for the most part, if you read about retrogrades and through some books and all that, they really don't it's not that very clear, because you might actually get the impression that on those sections you're not going to be reading into the signs. But that was very clear that we always read into the signs. So that would be columnar retrograde, like you explained, which is very clear.
Right, you have columnar retrograde, and then you have, in rare cases, you have row retrograde, which is another thing. And I don't, and like I said, I don't want to make it confusing, so I'll leave that one alone. But both of those things are the exceptions, or I should say rare. Okay, they're not what you find in most inscriptions. So was there anything else? Any other questions? I see Jehuti Asar Ra. He says, so can you go over the term? Okay, we already covered that one. I thought I saw another question. Let's see. Okay, Unc Benu, it's important to note that the result of the project will also be a scientific approximation and consensus as well. Oh, he's talking about the project before. Yes, there is. He's talking about the project I mentioned earlier, in terms of the historical pronunciations. Now, through the historical comparative method in linguistics, there are, this is something. Now, matter of fact, let me go back to our curriculum. If you notice in our curriculum, stage 3 of level 1 is a basic understanding. At stage 3, we will gain a basic or foundational understanding in historical comparative linguistics. That is necessary. Now, if we were learning Spanish or French or a language, that has large speech communities, then we wouldn't have to bother with a lot of these technical pieces of information and knowledge. We wouldn't have to bother with that. But because of the nature of Rodney Kemet and the writing system and things like that, we have to. Okay, we're the ones that's going to have to do it. Now, the future generations, once we put in the work, then the others won't have to do this. It's the same way that the Jewish community revived Hebrew. When the state of Israel gained its statehood, I believe it was 1947, 1948, or whatever the case is, one of their first priorities was to revitalize the Hebrew language. And so it was state sponsored. It was sponsored. It was funded. It was a national project. It was national pride. Everything. Everybody was in support of it, and so on. And so when they were doing that, they had to go through a lot of technical things. But now, today, they have a few generations of first mother tongue speakers of Hebrew by now, who don't have to go through all those technical things anymore. So the reason why I'm saying this is because it's on our shoulders and in our laps to put in this meticulous work so that our future generations will not have to. Okay, so we have to learn a little bit about historical comparative linguistics for those who are going to be helpful in these kinds of projects and endeavors. And so the reason why I bring that up is because with historical comparative linguistics, there are things that you can know, because it is a science, and you can know, just like genetics, where you can take somebody's fingerprint and identify a person. You can take somebody's DNA and identify a person, or identify if someone is related to someone else. And so with languages, there are features within languages that are identifiable. And so when we talk about the historical pronunciations of these words, it's through the historical comparative method, along with some other technical aspects of linguistics, that we are able to recover some of those historical pronunciations, but not all of them. So it's not going to be possible to get all of them. But for a majority of them, or for the ones that can be recovered, those are the ones that will be obviously recovered. So there is going to be a level of scientific knowledge where there will be plenty of evidence for. And then there's going to be some things that you're not going to be able to show as much evidence for. And on those things are going to have to be based on a general consensus. And so this is what brother Unc Benu is referring to. So some of it's going to be scientific, and some of it's going to be based on consensus. And with those two combined, we'll be good to go. All right. So our future generations will be able to feel confident in the way that we are going about revitalizing the speech community. All right. So that's it. as far as that goes. With any other questions? let's see. I have two. Okay, does uppercase. Okay, so we already covered that one. And I think someone had a question. Okay, OG Barbie, can you pronounce it? I'm not quite sure what they're asking to be pronounced. Does anyone know?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Yeah, OG Barbie, if you can just let us know what you mean by pronouncing. Yeah, and if you have any other questions, definitely type them in now, because we want to wrap this up. We've been on for approximately an hour and 26 minutes. We have about 4 minutes left. We want to keep these bite-sized videos. You know, we don't. Our attention span is kind of short, so we don't want to make this too long. So in the meantime, until maybe somebody may have a question. Does anybody on the panel have any comments, questions, or anything they want to share?
No.
Okay. And I can't see who's on the panel. Okay, so we have Son Setep and Ra, we have Damo, Son Emiket, Son Sean, and Son June with us tonight. All right, so I know we did like a little roll call earlier, but I just want to make sure everyone's acknowledged. So we have Son Damo. As a matter of fact, let me cycle through everyone's image here. So we have Son June. For those who may not know who Son June is on the panel. And who else do we have? We have Son Damo. Son Damo's on the panel. All right. And let's see, who else do we have? I could pull up real quick. Okay, we have Son Setep and Ra that we have on the panel. And there's Setep and Ra. And we have Son Sean. So that's who we have with us today. And myself. All right. So, were there any questions? I'm just kind of stalling.
Yes. So David Young was asking, can you explain what will be actually happening on future broadcasts for the newbies?
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that question. On our future broadcast, we will, like I said, maybe if you had just joined in after we had went over our intro. Today we call it Divine Words Wednesdays. And so we have two series of shows that we do, Divine Words Wednesdays and Freestyle Fridays. And so Freestyle Fridays, you can expect us to do just that, freestyle. We have fun. We pick a random inscription, or somebody recommend it to us and send it to us on Facebook or whatever the case is. And we will do our best to transliterate and translate from memory. We don't use any books whatsoever. And so that's a fun way of having fun. And then two, you're able to evaluate your own progress in this learning process. And so we go through it, and we have crowd participation. People in the chat can try to guess what the glyphs are, what they represent, how they function. Each of the steps. We go through these steps. I wish I had the steps up here right now, but there are 4 steps that we do all the time. Everyone does it. Anyone who steps outside of these 4 steps, they are not going to be able to translate correctly. And so we have to really, really understand that this entire process is there is a method to this. Just like anything else, when you drive a car, there is a method on how to make right turns. You don't turn the steering wheel to the left if you plan on making a right turn. Okay, unless you have a special type of car or whatever the case is. But if you want to make a right turn, you're not going to turn your steering wheel to the left. If you want to stop your car, you're not going to put your foot on the gas. Okay, there are certain things that that you have to do to reach a certain goal. And so learning this language and the writing system is no different. And it goes for everything. To become a chemist, you have to go through prerequisites to become a chemist, to become an astrophysicist, and to become a surgeon, you have to go through a certain steps and procedures and learn and so on and so forth. So this is no different. And I always emphasize that because in all that we do, whether it's Divine Words Wednesdays or Freestyle Fridays, we're always emphasizing these 4 steps. And we went over it earlier, so I don't want to rehash that, but we went over that earlier. So what you can expect on Fridays is Freestyle Friday. We pick inscriptions, or they get sent to us, inbox, Facebook, or whatever the case is, and we just have fun with it. You know, that's Fridays. Wednesdays, like tonight, we slow it down a little bit and we deal with topics. So Wednesdays is topic driven and Fridays is inscription driven. So and we take requests. So if you have something that a topic that you would like for us to cover, then, you know, when we put something together, and we will address that topic. You know, we'll do research if we have to, whatever the case is, or something that we already know, then we'll put something together and give a short presentation on it. And so that's what Wednesdays are about. We refer to it as Divine Words Wednesdays. Okay, and the phrase Divine Words is what people say when they say Medew Netcher. So it's Medew Netcher Wednesdays. You know, Divine Words Wednesdays. Okay, so we cover topics like the scientific method in Kemet, how math, algebra was done in Kemet. Does the word Kemet mean black? The land of black people. What's some other things? Good character. We had shows on good character. And we touched on the maxims of Ptah-hotep. We did a couple of shows on the relationship between what they call hieratic and hieroglyphic. We did a show on, you can look in our archives and you can see the kinds of shows and how our shows are topic driven for Wednesdays. So we're open to suggestions. We're like a DJ sometimes, you know, we'll take requests. So I had a comment. Was that Damo? Yeah, you're coming in very low.
I was saying we did a show on love.
Oh, that's right. Right. We did a show on love poems. We did a show on the some aspects of Christianity, how it's very similar to some of the things that we find in Kemet. That was one of our early shows by the brother Chris. Put together a presentation. So yeah, that's pretty much, you know, how our Wednesdays go. All right. So was there anything else? Any other question?
There are no questions, but I have a question for the members of the panel, and I guess anybody on the chat who feels they want to answer. But my question is, what inspires or what gives you the drive to continue learning, you know, learning Sesh Medew Netcher, you know, because I know that some people just enter because they enter into the language because they're kind of intrigued and they learn a bit and that's that, or some people just don't want to learn it the right way. But knowing that we've been doing this for almost 3 years, you know, just using the curriculum and whatnot, it would be interesting to know, like, what, you know, what motivates members of the panels or the Seshu, you know, to continue doing doing this and learning and, you know, just putting in work. So anybody on the panel can answer that.
Okay, so I will go. Oh, that's June. All right, June, you got it.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm MC Iron Lung. I'm talking all the time, so I'm more than happy to yield the mic. So go ahead.
Okay. I'll give up two things that help motivate me. One is just to keep in line basically with the curriculum that we have set up. I mean, you have to be You have to be proficient in one stage, basically, to get to the next. So working on being as proficient with the language as I can, with goals of getting to the into the higher levels, especially with the application and just learning as much as I can. And then also, as we always say in here, let the ancestors speak. The ancient Remetch were genius and basically a pinnacle of civilization for what they built, the philosophy and what they left behind. So learning the language to allow the ancestors to truly speak is another motivational factor. Those are like the main two that I wanted to shout out right now.
Okay, that's good. So I'll go next then. Because I echo what you just said, and I'll add to it. What I'll add, because it's a list of things, like you said, we could probably talk about this for a whole hour, but I will add to it the fact that, if you understand the concept of magic, and when magic stops being magic, there's a threshold to where magic is no longer magic. And that threshold is based on knowledge. And so magic is only magic to those who are ignorant to how the magic trick was done, or the illusion, or whatever the case is. So to the magician himself, what he is executing and what he's doing is not magic to him. It is science to him. But to the audience who is ignorant to how he's doing what he's doing, it's magic to them. So it's better to be in the know than to be in the not know. So you move from ignorance into knowledge. And so when it comes to Kemet has always been branded as the mysterious place, the place of the mysteries, the esoteric, and so on and so forth. That it's always been kind of pegged that way from the European communities from back in the day, even from the Greek days of the Greeks and the Greeks' heyday up until now. And so one way to combat that is you have to decide, do you want to sit in the audience all the time and be ignorant of the tricks and just enjoy it? Or do you want to know how the magician is doing what they're doing and be in the know? And so what inspires, one of the aspirations for me was my desire to be in the know. And so it kind of ties into what you said, June, about letting the ancestors speak. We want to make the mysteries, we want to unmystify and unmysterize the mysteries. And you have to know. It's simple as that. And so the way that you know is to reconnect and allow the ancestors to tell you and to teach you. And hence that's what you were just saying as far as let the ancestors speak. So anybody who's attempting to publicly influence people about Kemet in terms of a role of a teacher, if they professing to be a teacher, a lecturer, or a priest or priestess, high or low, then they have to be able to understand the language. If they don't understand the language, then they are handicapped. And it is unfair to the sincere seekers for such a person to neglect doing that and then set themselves up as one of those positions of a teacher and so on and so forth. So to prevent that, then that should be motivating, additional motivation for people to learn the language so that we can actually help each other to really truly understand Kemet for what it is from a perspective of knowledge and not the ignorant side. We want to be behind the curtains with the stage and crew and making it happen as opposed to being in the audience and just receiving things. All right, so we have to have agency in this. And so that's one of the things. So I'll just add that. But like I said, that's something that we could talk about. We could actually have a whole entire show on it. Maybe we should make a note of that and have a future show just on that alone, on that question alone, so we can kind of talk about a lot of things. So, but if anybody else, let me read a couple of what others are saying. Unc Benu says to the accurate reconstruction of the culture and traditions. So that's a very good motivation, you know, and it kind of speaks on to what June, what you said, and what I said. You know, you have to allow the ancestors to tell you, to speak for themselves, you know, what they did, why they did what they did. Okay, and the only way you're going to know that is by way of the language. You're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to get around it. And we've had decades of people who may have had, you know, the best interest in heart and everything, sincere, 100% sincere in everything, that may have fallen short, and we just have to pick up from where they left off. You know, we have to improve on things. We have to take things to a next level. Everything is improved now. You have new and improved Tide detergent. You know, nobody's using the first Tide that ever came out. iPhone is up to what? iPhone 10 now. Windows is not Windows 1.0 anymore. It's Windows 10. Mac OS. OS X. High Sierra. So my point is that everything improves, everything grows, everything changes and expands. And so we have to expand our body of knowledge. So only way we could do that is if we learn the language. And son David Young says, I want to be able to read the inscriptions during my upcoming visit to Kemet and not being told what they mean. Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, there's a video. I'm going to see if I can find it. There's a video on YouTube that I saw where somebody's giving a tour of somewhere in Kemet, one of the temples, and the person who's giving the tour, he points out a glyph, and he says that that's the name Allah. Now we know that Egypt is a Muslim country today, you know. And Arabic is the Egyptian Arabic is the main, you know, language and everything like that. So this person in the video, he's pointing out the name Allah on a temple column inside of a temple. And it's not. When you look at it, if you're familiar with the language, what the glyph is, it's the glyph for the word ready. It's a hand, arm with a conical loaf inside the hand, which is a triangular looking object in the hand. That's the word di or ready, which means to give or to allow. That's what the word means, ready. Like if I say di and ek Uncle Jasaneb, that means I have given to you life, prosperity, and health. That word is in there, di. When we read the offering formula, when the brother Sean, son Sean read the offering formula, as a matter of fact, I'll show you. Let's have a look at it. Where do I have it here? So if I show you this again, if you notice, matter of fact, here's a glyph right here. Let me oh, I can't turn on my cursor. So if you all look at the second row, where you see that arm and that triangular shaped object in the arm, in the hand, and then you have the viper underneath of it. That is the word DF. DF, Peret, Kheru, etc. But that DF, that is may he give. It's the word to give. And so this person pointed that out and said, that's Allah. Because the way they write Allah in calligraphy, they can make it look like that. You see? So anyway, I just wanted to say that. So David, yeah, that's excellent, because you don't want to go over there and come back and tell us, Bismillah, you know, Allah's in the cliffs. Oh my goodness, you know. And start writing books. Ra is Allah. Wow. He has 99 attributes. Yeah, so anyway. Anybody else?
That's Gardner code D37. If somebody wants to look it up or look at it.
Okay.
D37.
Okay, excellent. All right, okay. And by the way, see, when we mentioned it, when we mention everything, we gotta explain everything, you know, because hopefully these videos. Matter of fact, please share our videos. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, and make sure you click the bell so that you'll be alert. Because sometimes now we have a schedule of Divine Words Wednesdays and Freestyle Fridays, but we also will pop up on other days, off days, and you know, because a lot of times the subject matter that we deal with are driven through social media. So, you know, when people are talking about a topic enough that draws our attention, then, you know, we'll speak on it and things. And so sometimes we don't want to wait a whole week or so, so we'll pop up. So make sure you click the subscribe and the bell, and then share the videos. We have an archive of videos already. We have several videos that we've done that are on our channel. You know, check them out at your leisure and share the videos for people who you think that are interested. And you know, hopefully that we are saying something in these videos that will benefit you. And we are open for questions, comments, critiques, you name it, all of the above. You know, all of the above. We have a Facebook channel, a Facebook group, Sesh Medew Netcher. You can join the group, get your questions answered. If you have comments, if you feel that we are wrong about something, bring it up. We welcome that. Okay, we understand that that's what it's all about. We are moving forward with accuracy. The goal of scholarship is quality and accuracy, accurate information used to expand our body of knowledge, and then we extract from that body of knowledge on things that we can apply in our lives, personally and collectively. And so we understand that, and we wholeheartedly agree with that. And so we embrace any types of questions, comments, the sharing of information, and even criticisms. All right. So be sure to spread that. But it doesn't look like anybody else has anything. And, you know, I have a habit of doing these long goodbyes. So I will be quick this time. And that's all I have for tonight. And I do want to say dua to those who have hung out with us. This is our first Divine Words Wednesdays. Hopefully we'll pick back up. And, you know, more people will tune in as we continue to do it. We try to start by 9 p.m. on Wednesdays, Eastern Standard Time. So 9 p.m. for Divine Words Wednesdays and 9 p.m. also for Freestyle Fridays. All right. And like I said, make sure you check us out. Send a friend request to any of us on the Sesh Medew Netcher. And that's it. Anybody else have anything on the panel? Before, you know, we give Sonnet Imiket the last words. I do want to say, as the Sesh Medew Netcher, as a group, we are an open group. This is not we're not a private club of, you know, a bunch of bougie men and women who think we know it all. We are a group that we do have a requirement and prerequisite qualifications that you must meet in order to become a member of the group. But we explain all of that on the website, seshmedunetcher.com. There's a page dedicated to the Sesh Medew Netcher. And so if you're interested in the group, then by all means, just let us know. Give us, you know, reach out to us. But we're an open group. We want to expand the membership. It's open to men and women. We're not, you know, one or the other. We're both, keeping everything balanced. And our group is going to expand because we have people. Oh, I'll tell you this. One of the requirements to join the group is that you have to be able to show that you have suitable proficiency at a beginner's level of Sesh Medew Netcher. That's one of the requirements. There's no getting around that, you know. So whether you take a course through our course or not, it doesn't matter. You can take a course with Dr. Rakedi Amin. a course with Banachi Montgomery, and others who, or anybody, or you can learn on your own. That's perfectly fine. But what we require is that you have to show that you are proficient enough at a beginner's level. So if you don't take a course through our course, then the only way we can know is if we give you some kind of proficiency exam. So we will give you an exam that you have to pass. And that's it. I mean, that's one of the major requirements. And what we do and everything, all of that is explained on the website. So we don't just sit around, twiddle our thumbs, and just try to be a group of people who think we know it all or anything like that. We actually put in work. Collectively, we wrote a book called Has the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Writing System Been Deciphered? A rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams, where we wrote a, how many pages? It's approximately 200 and a little over 200 page book where we have 2 parts. We are refuting Professor Williams' claims point for point that he made, and we quote all of his claims. We go point for point, line for line, all of his claims. We address them and refute them. And in part 1, we give you all of the backdrop information that's necessary for you to understand how the language works, the writing system works, what is decipherment, what is translation, what is transliteration, what is transcriptions, what is decrypting, what is decipherment, what is a writing system itself. What else do we cover? We cover so many things in there. Okay, so make sure you and support. If you don't have the book, shame on you. You should get the book. Get the beginner's book. Like I said, you can learn on your own or take a course. And so I am done. And I say dua u, and I'll pass the mic to Son at Imiket if you have anything to close us out with.
Yeah, just a reminder of where our websites, the where you can find us and some of the research that we have, and that would be seshmedunetcher.com, which would be SESHMEDEWNETCHER.com. And there we have, you can find some information on our book, on the different books that have been mentioned, and some translations, and the sign list that we use, or the glyph list that we use, and just different other things. And we have membership as well. So we have a free membership and a paid membership, and paid membership obviously has some benefits, some extra benefits. But I recommend that you subscribe to that page. And then we also have the Seba University. So and that's what you see on your screen, and that's where you'll be taking the classes for the language. So you want to check that website out as well. And if you haven't subscribed on our YouTube page, you do that, and also our Facebook group page. So yes, and what you see on the screen right now, those are the 3 books that we have published, and then we have the 4th upcoming book, which will be the grammar book, and that will be for the next for stage 2 and level 1 of our curriculum. So do get the books there on Amazon, or you can also get them on our webpage on seshmedunetcher.com, and highly recommended. And yeah, that's that. And once again, dua for tuning in, for having our shows are what you would label them kind of like a little bit boring stuff that most people don't want to participate in, but we kind of it's really inspiring and really motivating to for us, and especially to see that a lot of people always come in and tune in and participate and all that. So we definitely appreciate you guys. And hopefully you take the class, and hopefully you'll be part of the panel as members of this issue as well. So with that, I'd just like to say dua, and get an effort for those on the night time, and back an effort to those on the morning time. So Shema Mote.